is being recorded.
Right. Welcome everyone for another great Cyber Week session. My name is Hank. I am the Employee Engagement Manager here in our Career and Professional Development office at WGU. Today we are joined by Aaron Martin, a current WGU student and the Vice President of Cybersecurity at 360 Privacy, as he shares his career journey and helps us navigate your first steps in cybersecurity. From a SOC analyst to a security engineer, threat hunter to a chief information security officer, Aaron will help map those diverse roles in cybersecurity and provide you with an actionable advice for getting started and succeeding in the industry. So as a fellow night owl in cybersecurity, Aaron is passionate about mentoring the next generation of professionals. He understands exactly what is great and thrives in a dynamic field such as cybersecurity. And with that being said, Aaron, we're excited to have you and want to pass the mic over, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, Anthony. Excited to be here, everyone. Like Anthony said, I'm going to be talking about a bit about my journey. We're going to talk about first steps into security, the big areas to look out for, the different career paths in security, because there are a lot, and any great learning opportunities and everything that's available to you all. So, brief intro about me. I started out in 2014 while I was still originally a freshman at Western Kentucky University. I'd gotten my first internship during my first semester there of my freshman year. That was as a developer. And then by my second semester, I had taken a full-time job as a developer there. Development wasn't for me. I am not a great enterprise level developer. And security was always my passion. Even while working as a developer, I was building home labs and everything at my house, just pushing the envelope to get ready to move into security. So I was doing development for about 2 years, moved into my first SOC role, quickly navigated at that company, went from SOC 1 to 2 to 3 all in about a year and a half. So a lot of things from ransomware to corporate espionage, all sorts of fun activity. There I pivoted over to security engineering. I started working at Fortune 100s. Was there for quite a while, transitioned to a security architect, and was quickly promoted from security architect to director of engineering at my last place. And here now at 360 Privacy, I came in as just a regular old senior security engineer, and I've built the program from the ground up here. 360 Privacy, we're a privacy company focused around digital protection for executives at all sorts of fun Fortune 100 type companies. We work at removing PII from the internet and the dark web. I went from director after senior security engineer. Now I'm recently promoted to VP of cybersecurity as well. So I've everything under the sun when it comes to security reports under me. And even as a VP today, I'm still hands-on keyboard pretty much every single day. So we're about to jump into this. A common pitch I like to say to people who are getting into it: cybersecurity isn't just, hackers and hoodies. It's about protecting people, businesses, and communities. And so that's kind of what we're going to dive into a little bit here today. So let's see if I can get these slides working. So first off, let's talk about why security matters. Security isn't just about protecting systems. It's about safeguarding people, businesses, and entire communities from threats that grow more sophisticated every day. We've seen the change in the threat landscape grow greatly over the last few years with the introduction of large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, all those fun guys out there. It kind of flipped the industry on its head a little bit. Phishing attacks have gotten so much more sophisticated. We've seen malware get more sophisticated with polyamoric malware techniques. It's changed a lot since I first started. There's a big skills gap. While cybersecurity can still be pretty aggressive starting out, there's still a skills shortage across the board. And what is great about cybersecurity is people from all backgrounds can do this. Whether you're technical, whether you're more policy oriented, you're a great communicator, you've done shipping and logistics, there is a place for you in cybersecurity. I know many of people who came from non-traditional backgrounds. One of my best friends actually was a trucker for many years, pivoted into security about 5 or 6 years ago, and now he's running a security program where he's at. So security is for everyone. If you're passionate about it, you can absolutely make a great career in security. Talking about the career map is not a linear thing. You can bounce around to all sorts of positions in cybersecurity. I've seen people who've gone from just traditional blue team to red team, from blue team to GRC, GRC to blue team activities. There is no shortage of unique and interesting fields in cybersecurity. Um, if you're not familiar with all the different specializations, each, if you call it a blue team, a red team, even inside of those factors, there are different niche roles that you often see. Some are extremely niche and you'll find just at very, big companies. And some are just everyday things that you see at pretty much every company there is. Blue team, you're mostly focused on the defensive side, whereas red team is offensive. You're trying to break into systems versus protecting those systems. Then there's a newer addition to the group, purple teaming, that probably got popularized in the last 5 or so years. It's combining the skill sets of a blue teamer and a red teamer together to just do things like detection engineering, cross collaboration, DevSecOps kind of stuff. It's grown in popularity. It's probably one of the more interesting ones, in my opinion. GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Um, that is all about policy management, compliance like ISO compliance, SOC 2 compliance, FedRAMP, risk defining risk for the organization. It is an incredibly important part for security, although it may not be always as technical as something like a blue team or a red team, but it is incredibly important to organizations. And then leadership, being a VP, being a CISO, being able to set the security strategy and vision so that the team knows what to execute on. And now we're going to kind of pivot over here and talk a bit more about blue. So blue team is where I've got my start and is where I've pretty much stayed my entire career. I am by default a terrible red teamer. I could do a little, but not a lot. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I started as a security analyst, a SOC analyst at an MSSP here in Nashville. As a SOC analyst, you are 24/7 at just about every company. Whether you're a managed service security provider or a managed detect and response company, or you're at a Fortune 100 inside their SOC, you are the first level of the defense. So you're analyzing every security alert that comes through. You're either escalating it to a higher tier, or you yourself are that higher tier and you are digging in and looking at the logs, looking at the alerts, doing forensics. You get exposed to so much as a SOC analyst. You talk to people regularly. Sometimes there's a false positive and you have to pick up the phone and call someone and confirm it was a false positive. It is, in my opinion, one of the more challenging yet most rewarding positions in security. More challenging because you're just exposed to so much, especially right off the bat. But these skills that you gain working in the SOC drive your career further and further. SOC analyst usually pivots into kind of one of these next three tiers. Incident response, got the phrase the security firefighter who jumps into action when breaches occur, containing threats and minimizing damage. That's pretty true. You are firefighting a lot when you're doing security or incident response. You are, once that incident happens, you are right there. If you're an incident responder, you may be getting on a plane and flying across the company or across the country to your company's data center in California if you're in Tennessee. You are trying to figure out A, how they got breached, B, how did we remediate it, who was, attribution, who did it, who attacked you. It is a exciting job, incident response. I've done incident response for many years, and it's the quickest way to get your blood pumping if you are kind of a adrenaline junkie. Threat hunting. Threat hunting usually ties back in with your SOC analyst. Threat hunting is where you are looking at common APT groups, so a Russian nation state or a China nation state. You're looking at what their tactics, techniques, and practices are, and just searching through logs, searching through every tool you have, just to make sure that there isn't a breach that maybe an alert didn't catch. You're just always on the hunt to find, you know, any sort of adversary. Most of the time you don't. That's what you hope for, right? Um, but it is a little phrase there, cyber detective. That's pretty much true. You are looking for clues that could lead you to finding a breach that no one had ever thought of. And then security engineering. Security engineers, they design secure cloud architectures, hardening applications, and creating a defensive infrastructure. So security engineers are usually the practitioners who are performing defense in depth. And what I mean by that is having a multiple layered approach to security. So starting at identity, so making sure MFA is set up, making sure you're using single sign-on, putting those controls in place, down to network controls. On our firewall, are we limiting the ports that should be inbound and outbound when it comes to network traffic? Introducing intrusion detection and prevention systems, which look at network traffic to determine if there is any malicious network activity going on and blocking it if so. All the way down to your endpoint level. Is encryption turned on? Are we running EDR? It's a multi-layered approach, and you get hands-on in a lot of different systems and areas of security being a security engineer. Security engineers usually can go to architecture afterwards. That was my path after security engineering. An architect is kind of a blend role of being a security engineer, but also looking at the organization holistically and seeing where your gaps are, and then introducing new security controls around those gaps. It's a quite a bit more senior role, but it's a very technical, like a very good challenge if you're someone who's a good troubleshooter. You love working with technology, and you love being just exposed to as many different technologies. Security engineering and security architecture are great routes to go. And like I said, any one of those you can pivot to. Typically, you likely start out as a SOC analyst. At least most of the people that I know and have met, we've all started out as SOC analysts. And then from there, your career path can change however you want. If you want to stay in blue team, you absolutely can. If you want to pivot to red team, red teamers who were blue teamers before are far and beyond, in my opinion, sometimes better than those who just started out as a red teamer, because you know the defensive structure that most companies are going to set up and where the gaps usually lie. So I'm going to pivot over to the next screen to talk about red team. And also, if there's any questions, feel free to put in chat, come off mute, interrupt me at any time. So red team on the offensive side, thinking like an attacker. That is day in, day out your job. If I was a bad actor, how am I going to gain compromise these systems? Is it something as easy as sending a phish? Because still right now your top two threat vectors are exploitation, because we've had more and more 0 days come out and unpatched systems that still live out there, or phishing. Phishing attacks, like I said earlier, with the introduction of AI, have gotten harder and harder to detect. Used to, they were super easy. They were filled with grammatical errors, spelling errors, and they were always something super cheesy. Nowadays, thanks to AI, they are, picture perfect. Exactly what you would expect a normal person to send you in a phishing email. The phishing sites themselves have gotten more sophisticated with introductions of tools that create a technique called adversary in the middle, which is a way to bypass traditional MFA. There's open source tools out there that people have just put out there for red team activities that have been picked up by bad actors, like it usually happens. Most tools that bad actors use are open source tools these days. They're rarely custom built unless they're going after someone like the government. But kind of teetering off in here, we've got penetration testers, the most common red team role. You're finding vulnerability in systems and applications and networks and just trying to get root or domain admin or anything like that. These are all sanctioned ethical hacks. you are a red teamer either for your internal company itself, or you're at somewhere like Mandiant where you're a consulting company and you're being paid to go and hack someone. These are all sanctioned events. A red team operator kind of blends into the purple team we're going to talk about in a second, where you're simulating real world sophisticated attacks. So you're looking at what, APT groups, advanced persistent threats, do out there. So we're talking government nation states, Russia, China, North Korea. We're looking at what they do. What's the common attacks that they're going to carry out? And we, as a red team operator, we're trying to emulate those attacks so that we can build better defenses against those attacks. Another one, exploit developer. You are the guy. You are the person who is building exploits. You're writing code, malicious code. Um, you're crafting. I'll put in air quotes, 0 days. Sometimes it does turn into a 0 day that you had no idea it was going to turn into, and then you have to go and ethically disclose that. But sometimes it's just crafting simple scripts or sophisticated scripts to break into systems. You also have a couple other paths in Red Team, kind of in the same vein as an exploit developer. There's attack or tools developers, where you're building modules for things like PowerShell Empire, which is a open source tool used to attack Windows environments using PowerShell, or writing new modules for Metasploit, which is a very common attack framework. Metasploit is an open source tool. It is packed with hundreds, if not thousands, of different attack techniques. So you may be someone building modules for those, or you may just be building new tools to use internally or at your consulting firm to use as a attack method. Pivot over to our purple team. Like I said, purple team is relatively new, within about probably the last 5 years or so. And it came from the detection engineering space, which kind of melded this old purple team together. Most of the time when I first started out, SOC analyst and security engineers, threat hunters, were the ones who were building detections in your EDR, your SentinelOnes, your CrowdStrikes, or in your SIM, your Splunks, your Elastics, your Sentinels. You were kind of just crafting off of like known indicators of compromise, bad IP addresses, malicious domains, common bad Windows processes, things like that. And then we kind of started to shift away from just building what we knew to doing this kind of hybrid role of, I'm going to run these attacks in my environment, generate the logs, see whether even if it's successful or not, but I have that data in those logs that I can turn around and then build the detection on the back end. The detection engineering is really what I cut my teeth at. Even as a security engineer, I was a detection engineer. It is, to me, the most fun role. This is completely my opinion, of course. But because you do get to play around with those attacks, you get to play around in your SIM, building detections, and you're constantly tweaking and tuning. And there's a lot of really great resources for people who want to get into detection engineering. There's an open source community called Sigma, or Sigma Rules. They are an open source model for how people build detections, and then you can convert that into your SIM or EDR or other tool of choice, and you've got pre-built detections right there for you to test with. You can contribute to it. I've made many contributions to that GitHub repo on different detections that I've built in my time. And then just general purple teaming. This is kind of like a project management style role, where you're just facilitating collaboration between red and blue teams to improve strategies. So you kind of have someone who's a middleman between the two, because maybe you don't have a formal purple team that stood up, but you like the project management aspect and you like communication and collaboration. So you're kind of the liaison between the two teams, and you're making sure they're working together to build those better defenses, build those better detections, learn about the new attack techniques and everything. And then security automation comes into play, whether that is kind of this building DevOps pipe, like kind of integrating security into DevOps pipelines and automating response workflows, or you're kind of a SOAR engineer, a security orchestration, automation, and response. So you're building, there's a lot of low code, no code SOAR platforms out there now. So you're kind of building Lego bricks together and saying, if this alert comes in, I'm going to hit one of these 3 Lego bricks and issue this response. Some sort of platforms are more heavy on the coding. And so having some Python knowledge, because I think 99% of them these days all use Python, you can get in there and write some simple scripts or write some full programs in the SOAR platform so that you're doing automation um, around the security events that you're seeing. Because a lot of times SOCs can be inundated in alerts, especially if you work at an MDR and MSSP where you have hundreds of customers. You see alerts day in and day out. And alert fatigue for SOC analysts is something that's very common. So having a SOAR platform that can sift through false positives, automate the low hanging fruit, you don't burn out yourself and your team, and your response times get just that much more faster. Uh, Kind of moving into GRC, security management, leadership roles beyond the technical, as this slide says, because not every cybersecurity career requires in-depth technical knowledge. Take a quick drink of water here, sorry. GRC, developing security policies, ensuring regulation compliance, and managing organization risk through frameworks like NIST and ISO. Like I mentioned earlier, GRC is a very important concept to security companies because there's more and more compliance frameworks coming out every day. NIST, in my opinion, especially in the US, is king of kind of setting the standard of what security programs should be doing. They have thousands of security controls from a good, better, best approach to security. As a GRC analyst, you're building policies that align to NIST. You're working with your teams to ensure that everything that we're doing is tied back to NIST or ISO. And then you're also developing what we call a risk register. How do we calculate and formulate risk for the organization? You know what gaps we have. We have identifiers on when we're going to fix them, what the fix requires, how much effort, how much money, and you're building this big portfolio of all your risks, and you're just working top down. Sometimes you're presenting that risk register to your leadership team, to your board, and they may have counsel in that as well. But the risk register is something incredibly important to security practices. Kind of moving into security program management. That's really kind of like your security engineering manager, your SOC operations manager, someone who is managing the team, managing the budget, keeping up with the key security initiatives. They're oftentimes meeting with their leadership to understand the directive for that team. You're building stakeholder trust. Security sometimes can notoriously be known in organizations as the bad guys because we are the ones enforcing rules that prevent people from doing things that they shouldn't be doing that they want to do anyway. So having someone who's building stakeholder trust is incredibly important to get buy-in on the security initiatives that you're doing. I see it all the time of bad security leaders who just come in and say, I want to do this and stop on everyone's ideas, or they want to do implement things that bring the company to a halt. The thing about security is you never want to stop the business. You want to introduce secure ways and compromise through secure ways to ensure that the business keeps flowing. So having great stakeholder trust allows you to implement those controls that, albeit it might annoy a few people, it might limit some things, but overall you're reducing that risk across the board. And then leadership roles, VP, CISO, director level positions. Like I said, I've been director for many years now. I've recently been made VP. Outside of me wanting to always be on hands-on keyboard because the technical part of me will never go away, I meet with my executive leadership team almost daily in some capacity. We are talking about business goals. Once I understand what the business goals are, I'm looking at working with my architect, working with our GRC team on how do we go from doing something simple to make it aligned with something like gross revenue retention. To me, GRR, gross revenue retention, when I first learned about it, meant absolutely nothing to me. They might as well have been speaking a foreign language. As you kind of get up more in the leadership roles, you really learn more about the business. And that's what makes security super exciting because there's always something new to continue to learn with. So now I'm tying security directives with company goals to make sure we are hitting our target numbers. Sometimes that is something simple as just making sure we don't get breached. Because if we got breached, all of our target goals kind of just, fall to the wayside. Sometimes it's collaborating with marketing, collaborating with sales, building marketing material to show, all the interesting things that we're working on that we've seen. I've released a white paper just about a month or two ago on some of the phishing things we've seen, because we've seen some really interesting and unique and novel ways people have been trying to get our information. And that goes a long way with those teams. And then building security culture. A security culture is something as simple as just having your employees report a phish or report an email that is suspicious, um, calling it out in your Slack or Teams channel when you see something. Our security culture is so great that the second I send our, quarterly phishing test, as soon as it gets sent, someone will post it in our Slack channel and say, "Hey, everyone, don't click this." And then our security test goes to the wayside because of, one person doing their job. And of course, I always get blamed. Um, but security leadership, is an incredibly valuable position to be in. Um, it's a lot of hard work to get there, but it pays off. Moving. Any questions so far?
It doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat, but if anyone would like to ask any questions, please drop questions in the chat, or we can wait to the end and you can ask your questions off mute at that time.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, I have a pretty really diverse background when it comes to my contracts. I've been a consultant my whole career, and so I started as a VMware admin. So as a VMware admin, you have to do a lot of security related work and I also even I started the USPS as a PCI DSS for that addressing of their issue. I think they were in the news in 2014 for having the customer data hacked. So I served that, but at the end I was still a VMware guy. And then in one of my jobs, where I worked 5 years, I ultimately became uh, like program manager. And then in my last job, all of a sudden I was managing. They hired me the principal project manager, and then I was moved against my wishes to manage a cybersecurity portfolio. It was so I think if you know NERC compliance for the critical infrastructure protection for all the electric utilities, that is a must. And so that became a cybersecurity. So now I have one job that is full blown cybersecurity, and I don't have any cybersecurity credentials. I didn't even have any IT credentials or anything before. So that's why I'm in at WGU to have some IT credentials, MS in IT management. And how do I turn it so that my next job application, which I apply, let's say I apply to be a security program manager or a CISO in a smaller company, how do I leverage whatever I have going on? Because they all want some certificates, right? So for that reason, I'm enrolling in MS in cybersecurity at WGU again. But until that happens, I need something so I can break into it would be really helpful. That's the question. How do I do that?
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and click to my next slide because that actually kind of leads into where I was going next. So you're obviously you're taking the first step, right? You're enrolled in school. You're looking at getting your master's and everything. Be as involved as you can where you're currently at. Look at where you can define policies.
I haven't worked in 2 years or 2.5 years.
Okay.
Well, I traveled. I went to stay in Nepal for a while, and then I started a business there as well. And I'm in school, and right now, I'm being approached by somebody at Amazon for senior TPM. And they approached me 6 months ago, but at that time, it was for a power and cooling job. And then today, I actually got the feedback for that job as well. Because the recruiter, that job had expired, but he said they like to, but they want me for data center stuff and not for the actual data center systems and not for the power and cooling. So I think there'll be something there, and then I'm really looking forward to like the outcomes from this slide if implemented in my life.
Yeah. So yeah, in that case, like, yeah, obviously getting your degree is going to help a ton. Outside of that, getting plugged in to different security communities, getting certifications like the CISSP or anything out of the kind of the family of the CISSP. ISSA squared is who does the CISSP. They have a lot of other really good management level certs and training. So kind of getting between your degree, looking at those certs and trainings and kind of getting plugged in will go a really long way into finding your, whether you're looking at a security program manager or some other kind of leadership role. Those are things that they often look for. And then really quick, Josh, I'll answer yours. Josh asked, what would you say allowed you to climb through your career? A couple things. One, being a good communicator. People notice that when you're very good at communication, whether that's via email, via a Teams message, or just in person talking with people. You know, never try to be the smartest person in the room is what I've always stuck to, because you never want to give off the sense of arrogance, because people will pick up on that. And so just coming in, speaking to people kindly, um, and then being curious. I don't tell people to do this because I am just a natural born workaholic, but I have my job and I have my hobby, and they happen to be the same exact thing. Um, so in your free time, if you want to build a home lab at home, something like Elastic, and which we're going to talk about here in a second, for the hands-on practice, building things at home that you can then convert into your day job, or building them at home so that you can land your first job, go a really long way. So kind of called that back a little bit. Great communication skills, curious thinking, um, kindness. Like, it seems kind of silly to say, but just being genuine and kind when you talk to people. And then, hard work. Don't be afraid to put in the hard work. Security, there's often times where there's a lot of hard work. This is not a career where you often can work a 9 to 5. Security, you're on call. In fact, I've never been not on call my entire career. Not to say that I'm 24/7 on call, but um, there are days where if an incident happens, it's all hands on deck. And that's where that hard work and perseverance comes through and really makes you shine. All right. Switching back over, getting started. Everyone here is taking their first steps into getting started. We're all enrolled at WGU right now. Even myself. I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but I am a WGU student. I am doing my BS to MS degree. I dropped out of college, went back a few years later, I got my associates, and I've just decided to come back and finish my bachelor's and master's. That is a first step.
I saw your LinkedIn. I think it said like community college from 2009 to like I don't know how long.
Yep.
Yeah, I added in LinkedIn too.
Cool.
Really like.
But yeah, so starting with your degree goes a long way. I learned the hard way as my first company went under. Learned the hard way of not having a degree. Doesn't get you past many HR screening things. So having a degree is a great first step. And the great thing about WGU, a lot of the foundational certifications are baked into the degree. So you're getting your Security Plus, your A Plus, your Network Plus, you're getting the Pen Test Plus, and a whole bunch of other things depending on which degree path you're going. So you're getting those certifications that companies look for. Outside of the WGU and the degree, there's other things. There is a great organization called Blue Team Labs. They offer several different certificates that are focused on being a SOC analyst. They have a tier 1, a tier 2. I think a tier 3 is coming out in the next year. So another great resource. There's also just a ton of resources out there, whether it's on YouTube or Udemy or blogs. There's a lot of stuff out there. And then, of course, there's the OSCP and the CISSP. CISSP is, of course, as you advance, you're going to have to, you're going to want, actually, they force you have to have at least 3 years experience on your resume to get it. It's definitely a management level cert. The OSCP is a much harder red teaming cert. It is a 24-hour live, you're being monitored on camera, and you're hacking a network that the people have put together a cloud range, and then you have 48 hours to turn around and write a report. So it's a very demanding cert. All of theirs by the folk who do the OSCP are very demanding, but that's what makes them great. Moving on to hands-on practice, practical skills. Josh, kind of when you were talking about how did I advance through my career, how I got my first security job was I was already in the field of technology. I was a developer, but B, I could talk to them in all of my interviews, even the technical interviews, because I was always home labbing. I had, whether I was using free credits from AWS or Azure, or taking old desktops and spinning up virtual machines on them, whether that was like VirtualBox or Proxmox or anything like that. And I was going and building different VMs or Docker images of things like Splunk and Elastic. And then I would set up attack machines and I would launch attacks against them, make sure the logs were going back to my SIM. And then I would look at the logs and practice building detections. That went a super far way. Capture the flag competitions. Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. They have great CTFs. Especially if you're wanting to get into a red team, try Hack Me. Even it's gone a bit further. They offer a lot of blue team pathways, little hands-on labs, coursework, and stuff like that. They are both great though. And then personal security projects. Whether you're building a tool and you want to publish it on GitHub, or you want to blog. When I have my own personal blog, and my CTO, who was the one who hired me when I came over here, he said my personal blog was actually a part of the reason why he hired me, because one, he thought the domain was witty, but two, the material, and I'm sorry if y'all can hear the stomping. I have a child upstairs stomping around. But two, I was constantly writing and I was putting out interesting stuff. I released a research project last year when me and a colleague who worked at a different company happened to go in and discover a botnet, and we wrote all about it. So blogging goes an incredibly long way. Internships, entry level roles, internships, in my opinion, are critical these days. Find somewhere you can get your foot in the door for 3 months, 6 months, or a spring or summer or winter, time off. When they offer those internships, get in there, learn a lot, make that connection with those people. Because as the next slide or the next piece talks about networking and community, the bigger your network is, the better it's going to be. Sticking with the internship for a second, though, I do want to add that my company, we are actually working with WGU right now on building an internship program. Um, Anthony and the team will kind of keep everyone informed when that internship program goes live. But that is something I've been meeting with my leadership team to kind of build a good pathway for students to come get some hands-on experience here. But they are fantastic entry pathways. And then entry-level roles. Don't be afraid to take a help desk role, or an IT role, or a developer role if you're finding the job market for security at the time isn't that great. Help desk people are some of the smartest people I've met when they transition into security. So one, you're building incredible communication skills because you are dealing with people who are always irritated and angry, probably like 70% of the time. You get great problem solving skills and you are introduced to everything. You see when people bypass controls that they shouldn't be bypassing. So when you move into security, one, you know how to talk to people. Even when you block something and someone gets angry, you know how to de-escalate that situation. You know how to troubleshoot because you're troubleshooting a printer breaking, and there's nothing harder than a printer breaking, in my opinion. And then three, you kind of already have that mindset of, I know this is a bad practice. How do I turn this into a good practice? So never be afraid to take an help desk role or just an IT admin kind of role just because security is great. But job markets at the time, depending on when the time is, they're not always great. But in the networking and community, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a network. Um, most of my jobs I have was gotten into the door because I knew someone there. Um, when I left one company, my first security company, the COO there, I became good friends with. When I left that place and went to my next place as a security engineer at a Fortune 100, he called me about 4 different times, one of which was 3 months after starting, asking me to come work with him. Eventually, I gave in. But having that network is crucial. I can't tell you how many people that I've known that I've either given recommendations to or I brought here. I have a group of people in my network that I refuse to go without. I have one more person to bring on next year out of my group of people. And that's just how tight knit, you know, my network is. So networking, and you can do that at things like B-Sides conferences. B-Sides conferences are all over the country. They are great. They're affordable. They're a ton of fun. Discord communities, there are a ton of, whether that's your local, you know, security chapter of an ISSA squared or um, a DEF CON group. There's always, whether a Slack channel, a Discord channel, there's always online activities you join. I'm a part of the Nashville security group here that's got a big Discord. There's tons of places that you can collaborate with people, even on LinkedIn. Engage on LinkedIn, post on LinkedIn, meet people, connect with them, and just build your network from there. And of course, you're at WGU. What greater place to build a network than at WGU right now? There are so many options to engage with people who are either students or former students or hiring managers. Just get engaged. I'm incredibly introverted. And I've forced myself to build a network and forced myself to reach out to people because it is really what makes your career go a long way. It's silly to say that, but building relationships with professionals in this field goes an incredibly long way. Becker, you asked, love, try, hack me. How can those experiences be translated into a resume? Usually, how I do it, I'll go ahead and put in a skill section on the resume the things that I've had experience with. So when you're using try hack me and you use Metasploit, for example, on a project or one of the learning paths to go and exploit a service, in my skill section, I might have a tab for technologies or frameworks or anything like that. I'll put Metasploit down. I'll put OWASP Zap down. Those tools that you have used and got familiar with, those absolutely should be on your resume because you have had experience with them. Maybe not 100% professional experience, but if you really go and learn the tools while you're doing things with TryHackMe, absolutely. People also recognize if you have a high score on TryHackMe or Hack the Box and you can put on your resume that you're a top scorer, people will absolutely recognize that. So when you put like an accolades section, throw that stuff on there. When you complete certifications with TryHackMe, put those on there. And then, especially when you're interviewing, talk about what you did, talk about what you learned, blog about it. That's what I was talking about earlier. When you're doing things with TryHackMe, Hack the Box, you built a home lab, blog about it. Even if it's just LinkedIn posts you're making, talk about it because the people who are looking at your resume, who are looking at your LinkedIn, your blog, they will absolutely notice that. Okay, I'm going to move to almost the last slide. Myths to bust. You have to be a hacker. Absolutely false. Many successful security professionals started with zero hacking, zero security skills. Roles in GRC and compliance don't even require technology like we've talked about. But this whole elitism that you'll may have seen on Twitter or anywhere of the super elite guys who've got their black hoodies on, you do not have to be that. That is a silly notion that I have actually heard in real life. Uh, again, it's all technical. It's not. the soft skills go the longest in a good career in security. Communication, policy development, risk assessment, leadership. Those skills are just as important, if not more important, than being technical. In my opinion, being a good communicator is far more important than being a good hands-on keyboard engineer. Because if you can't communicate the work that you are doing, the work that you want to do, you won't be able to get much accomplished in your field, in your career, really. So being a great communicator is probably the most important skill. Needed years of experience. Again, false. Entry level SOC analyst positions, internships, certifications, your degree, all tie into getting your first job. You do not need to absolutely have had any experience in security or IT to land a job in security. I know many of people who have come out of boot camps, come out of degree programs, and move into those entry level positions. They're entry level for a reason. Some are may not be as entry level. I will grant you that, and that can often just be the case of poor job descriptions. But if you've been putting in the time and effort in your degree, you've been home labbing, you've been blogging and everything, that first security role you get will be a breeze. It will absolutely be an entry level role for you. And then wrapping up, y'all are all starting your security journey, or your just technology journey. Pick a role, one of those areas of security, research them heavily, and then chase a project, build a project that interests you about that. Maybe you want to learn how to reverse engineer malware. Niche role, you'll land a job at like a CrowdStrike or something like that, but super fun and exciting. If you want to be a SOC analyst to start out with, like I said, tons and tons of resources out there. Find a project, find the training, pick your role, chase it, and of course, build that network and join a community. I can't emphasize that enough of how important it is. It took me a long time to realize that. And I tell everyone, meet people, talk to people. It goes a long way. Okay, I think that does it. Is there any other questions?
All right, well, thank you, Aaron, for joining us and providing that great insight in cybersecurity being the first steps. If you have any questions, please drop your questions in the chat, or if you would like to come off mute, use the hand function, and I will allow you to come off mute to ask your question directly. Be cautious of our time. We have about 10 minutes left in the session, and we definitely want to be conscious of Aaron's time. So if you have any questions, please submit those questions so we can get started. All right. So it does not look okay. We do have a question from Lance. Thank you for transparency and informative presentation. Could you remind me of your current job title and how long it took to get there?
Yep. I am a VP of cybersecurity at a company called 360 Privacy, and I was made VP this year. And I am 11 going on 12 years into the field.
Okay, great. Got it. Becker, we got a lot of thank yous. Very inspiring, insightful session. Appreciate it. Lance, Chris with questions. So just for clarification, it's not so much about specific degree, but having the right certification and experience.
It's a bit of a mix. Computer science degrees, IT degrees, security degrees, having a degree in technology goes a long way. I know a lot of people who've gotten degrees in, philosophy and arts and things like that have pivoted into security, but technology degrees go the furthest, of course. When you talk about technology, though, whether it's a networking degree or data science or cloud security or just cloud in general, there's a lot of different technology degrees out there these days. Just they all offer really good insights. Of course, certifications are going to go a long way as well. Experience will go the furthest out of everything, because over time, the more experience you have, the bigger and better. Like the bigger jobs you'll be able to take. You'll be able to go from a SOC 1 to a SOC 3, just having that more experience. Yeah, technology degrees in specific go the longest for you.
All right, thank you. Another question from Keith. You mentioned Elastic earlier in relation to home labs. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so Elastic is a SIM. SIM stands for Security Information and Event Manager. It is SIMs are tools that you send all your logs, whether it's from your endpoint, your cloud, your network. You put all that logging there. You're able to search on that logging. When we were talking about threat hunting, this is one of those areas of places that you'll threat hunt in. You're going through all the different logs of pretty much everything I just talked about, try to tie them together, paint a picture of what an attack is going on. And then you're also building your alerts and detections in there so that you can set up where you get a Slack message, or you get, if you've got a Ops Genie or Pager One, which are these on-call services that'll just call your number. You can set up the alerts and the actions that you're notified immediately when something goes off. And you can also set the criteria: low, hot, medium, high, critical, so you can set your severity and your SLAs of how fast you need to react to them.
So to kind of piggyback off of the home lab, what are some good tools or resources for setting up a home lab?
Yeah, there are a ton. Starting out, I would go one of three ways. Using free credits with one of the many various cloud vendors. And then from there, you can kind of go the other two ways. You can set up virtual machines so you can understand what a virtual machine is and how that works. You're also setting up the networking. You might be setting up some security controls in the cloud and everything. Or you can go the containerization route using Docker or Kubernetes, and you're building maybe deploying Elastic in Docker or Kubernetes, or you're just deploying it on a virtual machine. If you don't go that route, having an old desktop, old laptop that has a little bit of memory and storage space, you can install VirtualBox. VirtualBox is super easy to get set up, and from there you can put something like Ubuntu on, and then kind of build the services and stuff that you want to play with. But everyone out there, Splunk, Elastic, they all have incredible resources on how to set up and install their services. There's a ton of documentation out there on how you can kind of quickly get spun up.
So we have a question from Josh in the chat. How would you recommend a SOC analyst deal with alert fatigue?
Alert fatigue is a pain. Find hobbies or take time off, take breaks. I used to get up from my desk and go walk around for 15, 20 minutes every now and then. Because one of the MSSPs I worked at, we were hit all day, all night long. So take breaks where you can, go watch YouTube, go watch TikToks, maybe not scroll Twitter, because that's not always the best thing to do these days. But just get out there and clear the mind. Take time off when you can, because trust me, nothing's better than taking a week of PTO to refresh and come back to it. And then from there, you can introduce and start pushing automation. If you can get your company to invest in automation, you can reduce the amount of alert fatigue that you're dealing with.
Okay. All right. So we have a good question from Russell in the chat. For anyone transitioning from another technical role to cybersecurity, is SOC analyst the first step, or would you aim for a different role?
I'd say it depends on what you're transitioning from. If you're transitioning from a network role, a security engineer or a network security engineer may be a really good fit for you, because network security is all about firewalling or network access control. And if you've got really good experience with networking, you're going to fit right into that. IT help desk, sometimes depending on what you're doing, you might be able to put yourself in a security engineer role where you're doing identity management or endpoint management, both different subsets of security engineering. Or sometimes just getting in from help desk or sysadmin, SOC analyst is the right first step. It kind of just depends on where your skill set was, and kind of when you look at the greater scope of security, where you want to ultimately end up at.
Great. So from Janet, any advice for just starting out and building a portfolio on GitHub?
Go out and just find the area of security that you want to get into. I know I've just literally just talked about this, but if you want to look at SOC analysts, you want to look at red teaming, if you want to do a bunch of different of these, go out there, find the resources, whether that's doing a try hack me or hack the box, and building out maybe a beginner step-by-step list of like the steps that you took to ultimately compromise that box. Or if you're building the home lab, just getting out there and talk about what you learned, and then any commands that you've put together, just the steps that you did, whether it was spinning up a Docker container and running this curl command or Docker compose or anything like that. Just build that list of what you did, because that goes a really long way, because people will look at it and go, okay, so they didn't just say they built it, they actually knew the steps that they took to build it.
Great. And then we have one other question here. Are there positions that have 12-hour shifts, 3 days on, 4 days off, or longer hours?
It depends on the role. I've seen a lot of roles that are kind of like that, and those are typically tied to your SOC analyst roles, your threat hunter roles, where they just have kind of odd shifts. Well, they absolutely will have you work, your 12 hours off, 12 hours on kind of thing, or not 12 hours off, 12 hours on, but 12 hours for 3 days, off for 4 days. The vast majority of them, security engineering, architecture, things like that, you're typically a 9 to 5, 8 to 5, except for on call or after hours work. Incident response is the only other one that could kind of fall into that category, but incident response does include a lot of overtime, because when there's an incident, you're kind of all hands on deck until that incident's resolved.
And for everyone, I did add Aaron's LinkedIn profile into the chat. So if you wanted to network or reach out to him with any other questions, you could do so. I do want to give Aaron the opportunity to say any last words that he might have to our fellow night owls before we conclude our session today.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, I'll call out Keith right there, GitHub Student Starter Pack. That is a phenomenal resource. I forgot all about that until you just mentioned that. So that's a great call out there. Yeah, add me on LinkedIn. I am happy to answer any questions all times, day or night. I don't sleep. I have 2 5-year-olds, so I haven't slept in many years. So feel free to reach out to me with whatever questions. I'm happy to answer them. But like I said, kind of start researching the different areas in security, find your path, and just go for it. Just put all the resources that you can, and whether that's blogging, home labbing, because I'm telling you that it goes a really long way. It did for me. It did for a lot of people that I know. And of course, sounds silly, but build that network, whether that's with your classmates here, whether that's with WG alumni, if you're going to job fairs, if you're going to conferences, network, find people, even if they're just standing in a crowd or standing off to the side, go introduce yourself and talk to them, because chances are it's going to be a fantastic connection that you'll make.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Aaron, for joining us today and for sharing your time with us and your passion with your WGU community. We really took away a lot of actionable items to apply to our cybersecurity career journey. Thank you to all the attendees who joined us today. Please look out for other Cybersecurity Week sessions that we're having. I did drop a link in the chat for you to check those out. And Aaron, again, we're sincerely appreciative for you taking out your time on your schedule to join us and talk to your fellow night owls about cybersecurity. And thank you, everyone, and enjoy your day.
Yep. Thank you all.